Welcome back, my dear friends. Today we're talking about scales. We're talking about major scales. We're talking about minor scales. We're talking about pentatonic scales. We're talking about exotic scales. We're talking all about the 5 steps that I use to understand scales, both just conceptually from a music theory perspective and from a hearing stuff, because music is sound and we use our ears to listen to it, right? And from a guitar perspective, since we are guitarists and I love studying the guitar and I love using the guitar to make music, it's also important to talk about this stuff from a guitar perspective as well. In terms of whether or not this video is for beginner, advanced, or intermediate, I think almost any stage will benefit from this fundamental discussion. So just know that if you're a beginner guitar player, you're going to find a lot of this information maybe a little bit overwhelming. But I'm not going to say that you can't watch something like this, because you'll certainly have the framework for all of the stuff that you're about to learn in the future, which would be really nice. Let's start with a broad overview of everything that we're going to discuss today. The 5 steps that I use to understand all scales. Step 1, you gotta understand how to create a major scale. The major scale is kind of like the most important one. It's the one where you start from, because all of the other scales, we think about those scales in relation to the major scale, which brings us to step 2, understanding how to create a minor scale, which the way that you create a minor scale is you change notes from the major scale to get to a minor scale. And we'll explain all of this in great detail as we're going through. Step 3 is understanding that most usable scales is just a type of a major scale or a minor scale. So you can get to the point where you see, for example, like a Mixolydian scale. Oh my gosh, it sounds like a brand new scale. No, a Mixolydian scale is just a major scale with a flat 7. It's a type of major scale. So you'll get to the point where you can see most every scale as either a type of a major scale or a type of a minor scale. And having that framework, I think, is really helpful, because otherwise you're feeling to yourself like, there's thousands of scales. Not really. There's just a couple types of scales. Then we will discuss pentatonic scales, because pentatonic scales are very popular, especially amongst guitar players. So I might get some real angry comments in the YouTube comment section if I didn't discuss pentatonic scales and what's the deal with those. And then I'm going to discuss some exotic scales, some nerdy jazz stuff, which sometimes you can get away with in pop and rock and roll music, but maybe not all the time. But just in an effort to supply you with as much information as possible, I didn't want to leave out our beautiful exotic scales as well. So these are the 5 things that we're going to dig into. Let's start with a little discussion of definitions. I know that definitions might not be the most exciting thing to talk about, but if we're going to have a discussion about all this stuff, it's important that we at the very least come to an agreement on the words that we're using. So let's talk about this word scale. What the heck does the word scale mean? Well, from my perspective at least, a scale is a specific group of notes. And a scale is usually associated with a certain sound. So if we took the G major scale, for example, G major scale looks and sounds like this. When a musician says the G major scale, they're referring to that collection of notes. How many are there? I'm literally playing 8, but as we'll see in a second, there's kind of 7 distinct notes. Even if you're playing those notes all over the fretboard, it's really just a group of 7 notes, and some of those notes repeat at the octaves and so on and so forth. And scales are generally associated with a sound. So a major scale would generally have a major, kind of bright, like happy sound. A minor scale is going to have a minor sound. Sometimes people feel like it's a little more blue, a little sad. One of those exotic scales, if we took like a whole tone scale, that has this like floaty kind of like non-committal sound to it. I think in The Wizard of Oz, like during the like when they go up in the tornado, I think that's kind of like a whole tone thing. But anyway, the point is when you play a whole tone scale, we associate that with the whole tone sound. Let's take a Dorian scale, for example. I'll discuss in a moment, a Dorian scale is just a type of a minor scale, but the Dorian scale it has its own flavor of minor. We associate the Dorian scale with the Dorian sound, which is different than just a regular old minor scale. It's a little bit different, but it's different enough to where it has a different color, it has a different sound. So those are the two most important things I think about when defining the term scale is literally it's just a specific group of notes. And when we have a scale, we would associate that scale with a specific sound. There is another layer deeper where we could definitely have a discussion about a scale being more so the relationship in between the notes, but I think that that discussion might be a little bit out of the scope of this lesson for today. Let's talk about what the heck we mean when we say the word root. Well, the root is the note that the scale is based on. So if we are playing a G major scale, the root of that scale is the note G, because that scale is based on the note G. We could, for example, play an E flat major scale. And the root of the E flat major scale would be E flat. We could also change what scale we're playing. We could play E flat minor. And the root of the E flat minor scale is E flat, but it's a different type of a scale. So the root is the note that the scale is built upon. Let us continue. Scale degrees is the order that each note appears in the scale. Another thing that's important to note is that each scale degree plays a specific role within the scale. Again, we're not going to talk too deeply about scale degrees today. I may have to make another video about that sometime else. But the idea is that, let's go back to the G major scale. Each one of these 7 notes, they appear in a certain order. So the root would be scale degree 1. The next note that we play would be scale degree 2. The next note that we play would be scale degree 3, and so on and so forth. The 4th scale degree, 5th scale degree, 6th scale degree, 7th scale degree, and because of how octaves work, we're back at the root because this note is G. So that's scale degrees. It just depends on the order that the notes appear in, but from a long-term perspective, scale degrees are really important to understand because that's where a lot of the color and the character of each scale comes from, because each of those scale degrees has a role to play. It's like they're little villagers in a village working together, and each one has their own job. It's really, really great. Okay, next, let's talk about the word key. What the heck do we mean when we say the word key? Like, oh, am I in the correct key? What key is the song in? Blah, blah, blah. From my perspective, key is the psychological sensation that one note is acting as the root of the scale. So when I play a scale for you, something like this, and then I stop, you might feel a little bit of tension. You might feel like something didn't resolve very well. You might have had the experience where you really wanted to hear, and now upon hearing that note, it's like, ah, we've resolved. We've arrived back at the root of the scale, right? So psychologically, what's happening there is our desire to want to resolve back to the root That is the sensation of key. In that moment, I was playing in the key of C. So, psychologically, we wanted to hear that resolution to the C note because we're in the key of C and we're hearing that scale, that collection of notes, revolving around the note C. And it really is a psychological, in your ears kind of experience. Some people will teach, here's a quick, easy way to figure out what key a song is in. At the end of the day, the thing that really matters is how you are hearing the key. Maybe I'll make a different lesson about key in another time, and how to actually figure out what key a song is in. But for now, the thing that I want to impress upon you is that key has to do with hearing, has to do with what's going on in our brain and how we hear stuff. The reason that the scale that I played and the progression that we could play using those notes the reason that that sounds the way that it does is because it's in the key of C, because we're having a psychological hearing experience in that key. That's what's going on. Okay, really briefly, this is a little bit of a tangent. When people say that something is in a certain key, they could also use the word tonal, like this is tonal music, opposed to atonal music. So atonal music is when it's just a bunch of random notes. Like if it's literally random and you do not hear one of those notes as the root of the scale, then we can consider that music to be atonal. But even if stuff sounds really strange, like you can have something sound strange and it can still be in the key of C. So atonal doesn't just mean that it sounds strange. Atonal means that literally you listen to it and there's no root. You cannot hear a root of the scale. But tonal means that there is a root somewhere. Again, maybe one day I'll make an atonal video. I have strong opinions. I really like tonal music. I think that it's pretty. But something that has been really popular recently is the exploration of microtonal music, which is kind of something else. You could basically put like extra frets in between your notes, so that instead of just having the notes given to us on the fret, we can get those little in-between notes. From my perspective, I put microtonal music under the umbrella of tonal music. Just because something's microtonal doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're no longer hearing that experience of a key, that we're hearing the experience of one of the notes being the root of the scale. All right. So if you have any specific questions or whatever about any of that stuff, maybe I'll make some different videos. But now we have a common language of the definitions that we're going to use in this video, which means we can actually get started, which is very, very exciting. Let's talk about step number 1, which is creating a major scale from scratch. After this, you'll be able to create your own major scales all over the fretboard. It'll be very, very exciting. The way that you create a major scale is by using a very specific pattern of whole steps and half steps. What the heck are whole steps and half steps, you might ask? For today, a whole step is the distance of 2 frets on the guitar. So, for example, going from the 5th fret to the 7th fret on the same string would be the example of a whole step. A half step is just the distance of 1 fret, like the distance from the 5th fret to the 6th fret would be a half step. There's a lot more that I could say about whole steps and half steps, but for now, those descriptions will work well for us. Now you may be asking, Eric, what the heck is this pattern of whole steps and half steps that I need to use to create a major scale? Well, I'm about to tell you. Let's do this on the major scale of G. So we need to choose a note to start on, right? So we want to create a G major scale. Where the heck is our G note? Well, luckily for me, I know how to find the notes on the guitar. I'll probably make a video about that another time. But this note right here, the 3rd fret of the high E string, that right there is a G note. Well, what we would have to do is we use our system of whole steps and half steps, which goes like this. I'm going to write this up here just so that I can introduce it to you, and then we can actually dig into it. So we would take a whole step, and then another whole step, and then a half step, and then a whole step, and then another whole step, and then another whole step, and then we have a half step. This pattern right here is super, super important. It is the basis of creating a major scale. And the major scale is basically how we in modern times look at every single other type of scale. So this is very, very important. Basically, all the music that you know and love, that you create, that you've listened to, it all comes back from stuff that was created with the help of this pattern of whole steps and half steps, which I think is really beautiful and really brilliant. So let's apply this to the neck of the guitar, and we're going to start with the note G. So if we wanted to create a whole step above G, we would go the distance of 2 frets to land at this fret right here, the 5th fret, right? Now we can add the name of that note. That note happens to be A. So we've done our first whole step. So we can come over here. We can write that down because we've already done it. And so far we have a G note. We have an A note. Sorry, we have a G note. We have an A note. Very exciting stuff. Let us continue, and maybe we'll start to go a little bit faster as well. But let's keep the colors in order here. So we've got another whole step, which brings us 2 frets higher, and we've got the note B. G-A-B, that's what's going on so far. Let me play that one more time with actual volume. All right, up next, I'm sorry, a half step is up next. Now a half step, as you'll remember, is only the distance of 1 fret. So we can go right to the next fret and capture our C note. So what that sounds like, that's what we have so far. So now that we've done our half step, we can move on to the next whole step. So we need a whole step, and that will take us all the way to the note D. All right, I think you guys kind of get the point. So up next, we need another whole step, and then a whole step, and then a half step. So let's go through this kind of quickly. We want a whole step, and then we want a whole step, and then we want a half step. So a whole step above D would be the 12th fret, which is E. A whole step above E would be the 14th fret, which is F sharp. A half step above F sharp would be the 15th fret, which is G. And now, look at that. We got ourselves a major scale on the high E string. Very, very exciting. This looks and sounds like this. Let me go to this view so you can see a little better. There we go. G major scale. Super, super exciting stuff. With this collection of notes, you can see that most of the notes just have regular names, but we do have an F sharp. We have a sharp note in here, which is pretty exciting. Another way that I'd like for you guys to conceptualize this is to also be able to understand the scale degrees. So like we had mentioned during the definitions portion of the video, scale degrees is just very simply the order by which the notes appear within the scale. So the root would be scale degree 1, and then scale degree 2, so on and so forth throughout the rest of the guitar. There's one other way that I'd like to show you how to play this scale, and it's in playing it across 3 strings within an octave. So I'm going to take the group of notes that we have, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G, and I'm going to orient these notes across 3 strings. I'm going to do this a little quickly. I might make other videos in the future where I explain this in greater detail. But for now, we're going to go through this kind of quickly so that you can kind of just get the idea. So if we start this time on the low E string, then I know I have a G note at the 3rd fret. So G. Next, I'm going to add my A note. I'm going to stay on the low E string. Next, I'm going to transition to the next string and add the B note. What I will mention is that even though we're transitioning from one string to another, we still have a whole step in between the notes A and B. Because before, we learned that we have a whole step in between the notes A and B, and that is the span of 2 frets, right? Well, I am here to tell you that you can also get a whole step by going from the 5th fret of the low E string to the 2nd fret of the A string. Again, I don't have the time in this video to fully explain what's going on when we cross against different strings, but I just wanted to simply bring to your attention that crossing strings is a significant occurrence, and even though we're crossing strings, we're still dealing with the same pattern of whole steps and half steps. Okay, let us continue. From memory, I know that the next note that we need is C. So I can find that C note right there. The next note we would need is D. In order to get our next note, which is E, I'm going to come up here. Remember, we want F sharp. And then finally, we have another G note above the octave. So if we were going to play this across 3 strings, how we've written it here, we could play it just like this. Let me move that a little bit so that you can see it a little better. Now, if we think about the G scale that we created on the single string, which we can use this one because it's a little cleaner, which looks like this, right? And then we have our G scale that we've just created on the lower portion of the guitar right here. Those things sound a whole lot similar. Why do they sound so similar? Because it's the same collection of notes. You can play things on different parts of the fretboard, but if you're using the same exact collection of notes, it's going to sound extremely similar. So this has been a brief description of how to create a major scale. I showed you how you can create a major scale on G on a single string. You can do this on any string with any note. For example, if I wanted to be on the G string, and let's say that I wanted to do a B flat major scale, all I would do is apply the pattern of whole steps and half steps on top of that note. So we want to have that pattern memorized. I think that would be a good thing to memorize. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. So from B flat, go up a whole step, go up a whole step, go up a half step, go up a whole step, go up a whole step, go up a whole step, go up a half step. And we've got our major scale. It sounds so familiar, right? We're so familiarized with the sound of the major scale because it's an important scale. So much stuff is based off of it. And you can go to other places in the neck and play B flat major scale in lots of different positions. Oops. Ooh-wee. making some mistakes. Anyway, I think that that is a good brief overview on how to create a major scale. I would encourage you to take this knowledge and go create a bunch of major scales. Practice this stuff. Really internalize the pattern of whole steps and half steps of how to create a major scale, because it's the basis of so much stuff. Alrighty, let's talk about how to create a minor scale. The way that we create a minor scale is we change some of the notes from the major scale, which is going to be an important idea moving forward, because that's how we're going to think about all the other scales as well. So this is a really, really important idea that I want to impress upon your minds and your hearts and your fingertips as a guitar player. Is the way that we think about a major scale is the whole step and half step pattern that we use to create that major scale. The way that we think about basically every other scale is how that new scale is different from the major scale. So you don't have to do the whole step and half step pattern for every single scale. You can, but I wouldn't encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to, having learned all this stuff and having used it for a while, obviously I would encourage you to think about this stuff the way that I think about it. So speaking of how I think about minor scales, which is the way that most people think about minor scales, let's explain how to create a minor scale. You'll see that the notes in green are the notes of the major scale that we had before, right? So let's change this into a minor scale. How the heck do we do that? Well, luckily we have this nice little note here. How to create a minor scale: lower the scale degrees from the major scale, the third scale degree, the sixth scale degree, and the seventh scale degree by a half step. If we lower those notes by a half step, it will give us a minor scale. So let's locate the third scale degree. The third scale degree is this note right here, B. Now what would it look like for us to take B and lower it a half step? Well, we would put it one fret behind itself and instead play the B flat note. If we play just this much so far, we can already start to hear how different of a sound we would be creating. So here is what we have written. That B flat note is already giving us that kind of sonic quality of minorness. And then if you play a G minor chord, you can really sell that minor quality, right? Opposed to what we were doing before with the B note at the 7th fret, major chord. We really hear that major sound. With the B flat, just changing that one note already dramatically changes the entire sound of what we're doing. And this is a very, very important idea, is that changing the third, that's really the most important one. That's going to absolutely determine whether or not the scale and the sound that we're playing is major or minor. Now, in an effort to talk about the rest of the scale, let's continue with the 6th scale degrees and the 7th scale degrees and lowering those by a half step, and we can check out what that looks like. So the 6th scale degree is E. How do we bring that down by a half step? Well, we would do one fret behind itself, and we would play E flat. Now let's talk about the 7th scale degree. The 7th scale degree is F sharp. How do we bring that down by a half step? Well, we would play the note behind it, and it would just be regular old F, F without the sharp. We would call that F natural. So now, with our 3rd scale degree, our 6th scale degree, and our 7th scale degree lowered by a half step, we have on our hands a G minor scale. It already sounds so somber, opposed to our G major scale, which sounded like this, which definitely has that major quality to it, right? Minor, major. Very, very good. Okay, I want to press upon us one more time that even though we're changing the 3 scale degrees, the most important one that we're changing is the third. So I'm going to write this in red because it's super, super important. I'm going to do a little asterisk thing, or just a star. Scale degree 3 determines whether a scale is major or minor. Remember I talked earlier about how each scale degree has a role to play? The root of the scale, scale degree 1, that role is that all the other scale notes revolve around that note, right? The role of scale degree 3 is all about determining whether or not the scale is major or minor. This scale that I've written out here, it actually has a special name. Most people call it a natural minor scale. You could also call it Aeolian if you're being real nerdy. There are other kinds of minor scales, and we're going to talk about them a little bit, but all of the minor scales have that flat third. That flat third is the quality that determines that it's minor. The regular third, when we have a third that is a whole step above the second scale degree, no matter what happens after, we would put that scale in the major camp. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm getting into step 3 here, but it's a really important concept. And I know I'm kind of repeating things a lot, and that's actually on purpose. The more that I repeat stuff, the more that you might think about it from the same perspective, but just a little bit different light. But feel free to let me know. If you find it annoying that I repeat stuff, I can try to do that less often. But from the teaching experience that I've had thus far, I found that most people really appreciate just kind of saying the same thing in different perspectives, but I'd love to hear from you what you think. Okay, in addition to playing this on a single string, I want to walk you guys through what it would look like to apply the same concept across 3 strings across a single octave. So right here, we have the G major scale that we had played during step 1, and we want to do a couple things. We want to lower the 3rd scale degree, the 6th scale degree, and the 7th scale degree. So where is our 3rd scale degree? It's B right here, right? Now, we could play this B flat that we need to make it a minor scale. We could play it right there, but just to make it a little bit easier to play, I'm actually going to go over down to the low E string, and I'm going to add our B flat on the low E string right here. So now our minor third is going to be on the low E string. And now I can erase our other third. And we can do, the same kind of demonstration that we did earlier. Before we had G major with the B natural. Now, going to the B flat, we can already hear that kind of sinister minor quality just from changing that one note. G major, G minor. Really cool. Really briefly, anywhere else you guys play, but like the difference between a major chord and a minor chord, what's going on is you're changing the third. So for example, I have another G major chord right here. If I make it a G minor chord, the difference between those 2 chords is a B natural and a B flat, right? The next step is taking the 6th scale degree, which is E, and bringing that down a half step. So we're going to do that by playing an E flat right here on the A string. Now we want to take the 7th scale degree and bring that down a half step. So the 7th scale degree is F sharp. If we bring that down a half step, we could play F natural right here. And now, after we've altered the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th scale degrees, we now have a G minor scale across 3 strings. Let me give you guys a better look at that, because it sounds like this. Very cool. So now you guys can play a G major scale. And you can play a G minor scale. And more importantly, you know the difference between these things, which technically we've moved 3 scale degrees, but remember the most important scale degree was the 3rd scale degree. The 3rd scale degree determines whether or not a scale is major or minor. Just like I said at the end of step 1, feel free to build a minor scale off of different notes in different positions. Have some fun with it. Take the major, let's say that you know a major scale around here. Like if you're really familiar with that A major scale, see if you can take that A major scale and figure out where that minor 3rd is. So I think that might be a good exercise, is take the major scales that you're already comfortable with and see if you can turn them into minor scales. And then all of a sudden, you're going to experience the autonomy and the power of understanding music and understanding the guitar so that you can change things to create the sounds that you're hearing in your head, which is very exciting. It's one of my favorite things to do. So that is a brief overview of how we create minor scales. Step 3 is getting to the point where you can see almost all common scales as either major scales or minor scales. And like we just talked about, what is going to determine whether or not it's a major or minor scale? I'm sure you can say it because I've said it a million times already. It's whatever the heck that 3rd scale degree is up to is going to determine whether it's major or minor. So for the rest of the concepts, I'm not going to be writing down nearly as much information because I don't want this video to be hours and hours long, and I don't want to overwhelm you with too much stuff in one video. So we're going to keep it a little more broad. So let's talk about some examples of different scales that you might run into in the wild. So types of major and minor scales. If we took a major scale and we took the 7th scale degree and we flatted the 7th scale degree by 1/2 step, what the heck would that be and what the heck would that sound like? Well, from our memory, let's try the G major scale that we had just learned and played. Major chord. Those are the 2 positions that we learned it in, right? Now we're going to take the 7th scale degree, which is F sharp, and we're going to flat it to F natural, but we're going to keep everything else the same. Still sounds really major-like, right? It just has a little bit of a difference. So changing one note, it's still a major scale. It's still a major scale, it's still a major sound, but changing that one note changes the flavor of it, right? So we actually have a new name for this scale that you've probably heard before. The name of a major scale with a flat 7, this is called a Mixolydian scale. I'm sure you've heard the name Mixolydian floating around there somewhere. Now I will mention briefly, there's this whole idea of modes, right? I think modes is kind of outside of the scope of this video, but I will probably make a video about modes sometime. But yeah, the name of a major scale with a flat 7 is mixolydian. So now when you hear the term mixolydian, you don't have to be all afraid and scared of this scary brand new, oh my gosh, what the heck could mixolydian mean? No, it's simple. All it is a major scale with a flat 7. And if you're confident with step 1, your ability to create the major scale using your whole steps and half steps, then you'll also be able to make the mixolydian scale, because all you have to do is just change the 7th scale degree of the major scale. Now, there's another one for us to talk about. What the heck is a major scale with a sharp 4? Let's play it a little bit. So here's a G major scale that we learned already. Now here's a G major scale with a sharp 4. Really interesting sound, similar as last time. It's still a major sound, it's still a major scale, but changing from the regular 4 to the sharp 4 certainly changes the characteristic of the overall sound, even though we can still put it in like the major category. Like if you're familiar with West Side Story, Maria, I just met a girl named Maria, right? That one comes from this sound. It also plays a very prominent role in the introduction of one of America's favorite cartoons. Right? The Simpsons. It's a major scale with a sharp 4. To be completely honest, there's a little more stuff that's going on with The Simpsons as well. But again, that's a little bit outside of the scope of this video. Let's get back on track. The major scale with the sharp 4. This scale is known as Lydian. I know that maybe it's kind of confusing because we just talked about mixolydian, but these are two completely different concepts. I know the names are very similar, but mixolydian and Lydian are two completely different scales. But now you know that when you hear out in the ether, oh, that's a Lydian scale, or can we play it in D Lydian? Now you don't have to freak out. It's like, oh my gosh, Lydian, what the heck's going on with that? No, you just think about D major, raise the 4, and that's all it is. A Lydian scale is just a major scale with a sharp 4. So there's other examples of types of major scales, but let's talk a little bit about types of minor scales. So we could do a minor scale with a natural 6. What would that sound like? So let's play G minor, like we learned earlier. And now we're going to make the 6 natural. What does natural mean? Natural means it's no longer flatted. It's just going to be regular. So the little symbol that I use right there, that little symbol, that symbol means natural. So there's three symbols that you're going to run into when we're talking about notes. There's a sharp, which you're probably familiar with. There's a flat, which we've talked about a little bit. And then we also have this kind of box shape. And the box thing with the head and the tail, that means natural. So all natural means is like, instead of it being sharp or instead of it being flat, it's natural. It's the natural 6th scale degree. G minor scale. That's the regular old minor scale we learned. Now we're going to play a minor scale, but with the natural 6th. Still minor, but that 6 That 6 gives it a little bit of a different character. So this scale has its own specific name as well, a minor scale with a natural 6. This is called a Dorian scale. So now you know, when you hear the word Dorian, you don't have to freak out. It's just a minor scale with a natural 6th scale degree. Let's think about a minor scale with a natural 7th scale degree, which is the next option. Let's play through this. So we've got G minor. If we played through that scale with a natural 7, oof, that's spicy. It just takes like what was already kind of a somber, sinister, minor scale and just makes it almost creepy in a way. Little bit of a different flavor, right? Still a minor scale, but we have quite a bit of a different flavor going on. This scale, a minor scale with a natural 7, the name of this scale is a harmonic minor scale. So now that you know this information, when you hear like, oh, can you play for me C harmonic minor? You don't have to worry. It's just a minor scale with a natural 7. So here's the main idea, is that most of the practical scales that you're going to run into in your musical journey, it's just a major scale or a minor scale. We will talk about some exotic scales, some examples of exotic scales, but most of the time you could just think about something as like, is this a major scale with an alteration? Is this a minor scale with an alteration? And that'll be totally fine. Step 4, let's talk about the scale that us as guitar players have probably learned first and have spent the most amount of time with. A pentatonic scale. Pentatonic scales are real easy to play. They sound really nice, and they're especially easy to play on the guitar. Like they fit really, really nicely on the fretboard, which I think is a large reason why guitar players start, and some guitar players only ever play pentatonic scales. From a theoretical perspective, though, I think you'll find it helpful how we've gone about it, where, even though you might start playing the pentatonic scale day one on the guitar, from a theoretical perspective, it makes sense to have an understanding of the major scales and the minor scales before we can properly explain what the heck is going on with the major pentatonic scales and the minor pentatonic scales. So, pentatonic, penta, as we all know, basically means 5. So, pentatonic means 5 notes. If you'll remember the scale degrees from our major scales and our minor scales, how many scale degrees did we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we're an octave above the root again, so we're back at 1. So a major scale and minor scale has 7 scale degrees. A pentatonic scale only has 5 scale degrees. So the big question is, which 2 notes are we taking out? Now, we get to talk about another definition, another term. We're going to talk a little bit about leading tones. I'll probably make a future video more dedicated to leading tones, but here's the deal with leading tones. A leading tone is a note that wants to resolve by a half step. Remember earlier in the video when we were talking about key and I did that thing where I went and then I waited for the tension to be like, ah. We want to hear that resolution, right? That is a great example of a leading tone because the 7th scale degree wants to resolve up by half step to the root. So in this example, the major scale, the 7th scale degree is a leading tone. We have another example of a leading tone. This one doesn't feel as strong, so it's a little more difficult to hear, especially if you've not done a whole lot of ear training up until this point. But the other leading tone is the 4th scale degree that wants to resolve back down to 3. Again, not as strong as the 7 to 1, but we still have a sense of resolution from that 4th scale degree to the 3rd scale degree. So for the major scale, we have 2 leading tones, the 7th scale degree and the 4th scale degree. If we were to locate the 7th scale degree and the 4th scale degree here on our major scale, the 7th scale degree is F sharp, the 4th scale degree is C. And all we have to do is just delete the leading tones. If we delete the leading tones, now we have a major pentatonic scale. And already we can hear that it sounds a little more floaty. It sounds like less committal, basically. We still have that major quality, but it's just a little, it's like it sanded the rough edges off, basically, opposed to playing the proper major scale. That's the regular major scale with all the ingredients included. Pentatonic is just, take out the leading tones. So that right there is how you create a pentatonic scale. If you want a major pentatonic scale, then you take out the leading tones of the 4th scale degree and the 3rd scale degree, and a major scale minus the 4th and 7th scale degree gives you a major pentatonic scale. Let's talk a little bit about the minor pentatonic scale. So the leading tones in the minor pentatonic is a little different. Our leading tones here is the 2nd scale degree and the flat 7 scale degree. If we erase the 2nd scale degree and the flat 6th scale degree from a minor scale, so before our minor scale sounded like this, now with the 2nd and the 6th gone, the minor scale sounds like this. And that right there is probably the sound that you are most familiar with as a guitar player. Oops, sorry, that one of those notes were wrong. Oops, I played the 2nd. See? I'm getting too creative. Anyway, minor pentatonic. Now you know what the term minor pentatonic actually means, is it's the minor scale, but you take 2 of the notes away. And as we all probably well know, is that you can play this, across all the strings in multiple positions all over the fretboard. You're probably really, really familiar with your minor pentatonic boxes, as most teachers call it. But now you can have an understanding of what the heck is going on there theoretically and why it sounds the way that it does. I think that one of the things about the pentatonic scale is that you can play it 2 notes per string. so it fits really, really easily on the fretboard in those boxes. And then because the harmonic edges are kind of sanded off, like there's no more leading tones, it means that it takes distortion really well. So since harmonically it's simpler, you can put a lot more distortion on it to play some rock and roll lead guitar, which is super fun, right? So now you have an understanding of a pentatonic scale. In my mind, I just group the pentatonic scales in the larger categories of, well, is it major or is it minor? And then I just understand that the pentatonic scales are missing a couple of those notes. And it does have a significant influence on the sound, but for categorization purposes, I don't think about pentatonic scales as like a brand new type of scale. I can just think about it as, you know, as a minor scale or as a major scale. It's just missing a couple notes. Alrighty, step 5. It would be dishonest of me if I didn't let you know that there are some other scales out there. We're not going to go super deep into this stuff because, again, this video could easily become 6 hours long or so. But let's have a little bit of a discussion about exotic scales that I wouldn't necessarily try to make the argument that they're either major or minor. They are something else. They are a little more exotic. With exotic scales, I would put this into 2 different categories. We've got dominant scales and we've got symmetrical scales. Let's talk about dominant scales first. And we can start our discussion with the scale Phrygian dominant. And obviously it's a dominant scale because it's got dominant in the name. Phrygian dominant. What the heck does this thing sound like? It sounds like this. What's going on here? It's a major scale with a flat 2 and a flat 6. So it technically is a major scale, but the way that I like to use the scale is I like to use this scale to push me to another chord. So it's not so much that I'm thinking in a Phrygian dominant key as much as I am using the Phrygian dominant scale to describe a chord change. In this instance, I'm going from a G7 to a C major. And that chord change, there's a tension and resolution, right? The G dominant, the G7 chord, has some tension to it. Whereas the C chord has a bit of a release. So instead of just playing the C major scale over both of those chords, I want to describe that G7 chord with some tension. So that's where a dominant scale comes in, is I can describe that G chord with a dominant scale, and it heightens the tension and the resolution and everything. So that is an example of a dominant scale with the Phrygian dominant. We can also talk about the altered scale, which is something that jazz musicians absolutely love. The altered scale sounds like this. So we can still kind of feel that like dominant tension thing, but it's just a little bit of a different color. So I think the first time I played it, I forgot a note, which don't tell my jazz professors from university because they'll get very mad at me. Oops, and that was a... There we go, that's altered. And we could basically use it in the same use case, is if we have G7 and we want to get to C, we can describe the G7 chord with a G altered scale. right, to C. So G altered. To C. Even though I'm not playing the literal chords, I'm just playing scales, you can still hear when that resolution happens. So G altered, C. So those are two examples of dominant scales, which again, these are kind of exotic. And I do like these scales. I use them from time to time. But I wouldn't simply call these two like they're technically major scales. Like I said before, Phrygian dominant is a major scale with a flat 2 and a flat 6. The altered scale is a major scale with a flat 2 and a sharp 2 and a sharp 4 but no regular 4 and a flat 6 and a flat 7. Also, Phrygian dominant has a flat 7. I forgot to mention that as well. But basically, I hope you guys can start to see my point a little bit. Is like these two scales are technically major scales, but the way that I use them musically, it would be dishonest to say that it's just a major scale. In the way that like Lydian can be just a major scale. You know, you can play a whole song in the key and in the tonality of Lydian. But I'm not interested in like playing an entire song in an altered scale. I use the altered scale to describe certain chord changes. Okay, let us continue to symmetrical scales. Symmetrical scales are scales that basically use like the same pattern of whole steps and half steps. Like it's very rigid and symmetrical in the way that the pattern works. So for example, a whole tone scale is strictly whole steps. It's all whole steps. So here's a G whole tone scale. All you gotta do is you gotta start at a note and then you just play only whole steps. And you've got yourself the G. You've got yourself a G whole tone scale. That's all it is. A diminished scale is, there's actually a couple different types of diminished scales. Let's just choose one. We'll talk about half whole diminished scale. So half whole means that you do a half step and then you do a whole step. And you just repeat that forever. Half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. And there we have a diminished scale. And as you can tell, theoretically, it's constructed with symmetrical whole steps and half steps. And you can kind of hear that, like, the sound is kind of floaty. You know, we can make an argument that there's a root, but since it's all just symmetrical, like, it's all just kind of there, it undoes the role of scale degrees, more or less, because everything is just kind of the same. And since it's all the same, then no one really has like a personality or a role to play. That doesn't mean that you can't use these for interesting things. Like we said before, I'm pretty sure in The Wizard of Oz, that whole section where they're going through the tornado and stuff, that's all like whole tone stuff. But yeah, I'm just trying to give you a broad overview of how you can understand scales. So let's finish by kind of recapping a little bit. 5 steps to use to understand scales. 1, you want to be able to create a major scale using the specific pattern of whole steps and half steps. 2, creating a minor scale by making alterations to the major scale, right? Step 3, understanding that you can basically categorize all common scales as either a major scale or a minor scale. 4, understanding that a pentatonic scale is just a major scale or a minor scale without the leading tones. And then 5, we've got some special cases where sometimes you got some exotic scales. Thank you so much for hanging out with this one. It's a joy to be able to study music and study the guitar with all of you. If you like this video, it's really helpful to give the video a literal like and to subscribe to the channel. And another thing that's super helpful is that you could send this video to someone else that you think that they would enjoy it. That would help me out a lot. But without further ado, I will see you in the next video. Be sure to comment any questions or any ideas for videos that you'd like me to do in the future. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.